It was a rainy Thursday night when a man in a simple hoodie and worn-out jeans walked quietly into one of the busiest restaurants in town. Nobody recognized him. Not the hostess, not the waiters rushing back and forth, not even the manager barking orders near the kitchen doors. And that was the whole point. He wasn't here as the billionaire CEO whose name appeared on the ownership papers. Tonight he was just another customer. His name was Daniel Grant. To the outside world, he was the polished owner of a nationwide restaurant chain, a man with sharp suits and millions in the bank. But inside, Daniel was restless. He had been hearing whispers from board members and middle managers that something wasn't right in the restaurants. Low staff morale, high turnover, complaints piling up. He didn't trust reports on paper. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. As he slid into a corner booth, he scanned the place. It looked beautiful on the surface. Golden lights reflected off polished glasses, white tablecloths covered every table, and laughter filled the air. But Daniel knew that appearances could lie. He wanted to see how the staff was treated, how they acted when they thought no one important was watching. And then he noticed her. A young waitress, no more than 22, balancing a tray with trembling hands. She had her dark hair tied back neatly, but her eyes were red as though she had been crying just moments ago. Daniel's instincts sharpened. Something was wrong. She approached his table with a small, forced smile, trying to hide the fact that her world seemed to be falling apart. "Good evening," she whispered softly, her voice breaking ever so slightly. "Can I get you started with something to drink?" Daniel nodded, his eyes locked on hers. "Water's fine," he said gently. But what caught his attention wasn't her words. It was the way her hand brushed quickly against her cheek, wiping away a tear she didn't want him to see. For the next 20 minutes, Daniel watched as she moved from table to table, polite but subdued. A group of wealthy-looking customers snapped their fingers at her impatiently, one even muttering something cruel under his breath about her being too slow. She lowered her head, apologized, and hurried off to fetch their order. Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't how he envisioned his restaurants. When she returned to his table, Daniel decided to speak. "Rough night?" he asked softly. The question startled her. No one had asked. Not the manager who yelled at her earlier, not her co-workers too busy to notice, not even the customers she served with her practiced smile. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, as if the dam broke, she whispered, "It's always a rough night here." Her voice cracked, and before she could stop herself, tears welled up in her eyes again. She apologized profusely, thinking she had overstepped. But Daniel only leaned forward, his expression kind. "Take your time," he said. Slowly, she revealed her story. Her name was Emily. She had been working at the restaurant for nearly a year. She loved the idea of serving people, of bringing warmth to their tables, but the reality had crushed her spirit. The manager berated staff constantly, taking tips from them unfairly and threatening to cut hours if they complained. Emily herself was supporting her younger brother at home after their parents passed away, which meant she couldn't afford to lose this job. She had learned to swallow insults, to endure long hours, and to pretend she was fine. But tonight, it was just too much. Daniel sat silently, listening, every word like a knife. This wasn't a distant report anymore. This was real. This was the heart of his business, and it was broken. The moment turned even darker when the manager stormed toward their table. "Emily," he barked. "What are you doing standing around chatting? Customers are waiting. Move." His voice was harsh enough that several diners turned their heads. Emily stammered an apology and tried to move, but Daniel held up a hand calmly. "Excuse me," Daniel said, his tone level but commanding. "She's doing her job, and she's doing it well." The manager frowned, sizing him up, clearly thinking he was just some random man trying to play hero. "Sir, with respect, I run this restaurant and she works for me. If she doesn't like it, she can leave." Daniel's jaw clenched, but he kept his calm. He could have revealed himself right then, dropped his real name like a thunderclap, but he wasn't here for theatrics. He wanted to see it through. He wanted the truth to bleed out in front of everyone. The night carried on. Emily continued working, but Daniel could see how shaken she was. He decided then, tonight wouldn't end the way it started. When dinner wound down, Daniel asked for the check, but instead of paying at the table, he requested to see the manager privately. The manager, thinking this was about a discount or complaint, led him to a small office in the back. The door closed, and Daniel finally spoke. "Do you know who I am?" The manager smirked. "Another dissatisfied customer?" Daniel straightened, his eyes cold now. "My name is Daniel Grant. I own this restaurant. In fact, I own every single branch in this chain." The color drained from the manager's face. He stuttered. You're the CEO?" "Yes," Daniel said firmly. "And I came here tonight undercover because I needed to see how this place was being run. What I found was heartbreaking. Staff mistreated, tips stolen, employees crying in front of customers. That is not what my company stands for." The manager's bravado collapsed. He tried to backpedal, making excuses, blaming staff laziness, the economy, anything he could think of. But Daniel had already made his decision. "Pack your things," Daniel said. "You're finished here." Effective immediately, the next morning, word spread through the staff like wildfire. The cruel manager was gone. In his place, Daniel appointed a new manager, someone who had been with the restaurant for years, someone respected and kind. "And Emily?" He called her into his office personally. She trembled as she entered, fearing the worst, but Daniel smiled. "You have more courage than you realize," he told her. "Last night, you reminded me why I built this business in the first place. It wasn't about money or prestige, it was about people. I want to personally thank you for your honesty, and I'd like to offer you a new position, not just as a waitress, but as part of our training program for leadership." Emily's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of joy. For the first time in a long time, she felt hope. As months passed, the restaurant transformed. Staff morale skyrocketed, customer service improved, and the culture shifted. Daniel continued making surprise visits, but not to catch anyone, rather to stay connected with the heartbeat of his company. And Emily? She grew into her new role, eventually becoming an assistant manager, her story inspiring countless others. At the end of it all, Daniel addressed his employees at a company gathering. "We often think success is measured in profits and expansion, but last night reminded me, true success is measured in how we treat each other. Kindness, respect, dignity. Those are the values that will keep this company alive long after we're gone." And the crowd erupted in applause. This is where you leave your viewers with the closing hook. A story that started with one waitress in tears ended with an entire company learning what compassion and leadership truly mean. It's not just about food on a table. It's about humanity at its core.